Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, liberals remain in a state of hysteria after the Trump administration announced they would be rolling back the Obama administration's contraceptive mandate. These liberals claim that Republicans are trying to take away women's birth control, which is obviously a lie. But if liberals care so much about women's access to birth control, then why do they oppose measures that it would make it easier for women to get access to birth control? With me now, professor and author of Obama's America, a transformative vision of our national identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Liz.
All right, Ian, let's jump right into this. It is Democrats historically who have opposed the idea of allowing birth control to be an over-the-counter drug, allowing women to just walk into a drugstore, purchase the birth control that they feel is best for them. If Democrats are so concerned about access to birth control, why oppose over-the-counter?
First of all, the primary barrier to access for women to birth control, oral contraceptive, is cost. And anybody who's ever tried to get their insurance company to pay for an over-the-counter medicine knows that they don't. Insurance companies, private insurance companies, Medicaid is an exception, do not cover over-the-counter medicine. So if you make oral contraceptive over-the-counter and do nothing else, the cost to women will increase significantly. Democrats are not opposed.
Wait a second, but if it's available over-the-counter, if it's available over-the-counter, wouldn't there be a competition issue, a supply and demand that would drive the cost down?
Medicine is not free over the counter. Last time I checked, competition or not, it still costs money to buy over the counter medicine. So if all you did was make it available over the counter and did nothing else, you would make it harder for women who have money issues, as many people do in this country and in the world, to get access. But like I said, Hillary Clinton, Planned Parenthood support over-the-counter, making oral contraceptive over-the-counter. The Democrats' bill, which was sponsored by Patty Murray, I want to get the name right, it was the Affordability is Access Act, would do two things. One, it would make it, it would encourage the FDA to make oral contraceptives over-the-counter, available over-the-counter, and two, it would mandate that insurance companies cover this over-the-counter medicine. Democrats are for over-the-counter oral contraceptives just in a way to make sure that it still remains covered without copays by the insurance companies as it would be if it remained prescription-based.
Right. First of all, are you aware that you can walk into Walgreens or CVS and you can get a birth control pill, a month's worth of birth control pills for about $9?
Yeah, I looked it up today, actually. $9 for generic oral contraceptives. It's not free, but it's not an incredible amount of money. But if you only make, I don't know, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, then that's another $10 you've got to spend.
So
and if it's a matter of having the insurance companies cover it, I'd rather have the insurance companies cover it. Why would you make it harder rather than easier, even if it's only harder by $9?
No, that's a good point, and I want to talk about that point. Who's actually paying for it when the insurance companies cover it? When the insurance company gives you money for that, who is actually the one that funds that?
Who's paying for any medical cost? That's the whole point of insurance.
Right.
Medicine costs money.
The other people
Health
who pay into the insurance
covers medicine. Right, exactly. It's the same thing with heart drugs or cholesterol drugs. You could make the same argument about anything else. Why would you want to treat oral contraceptives differently? Why would you want to make it harder for this one particular piece of medicine?
I'm so glad you brought this up. I'm so glad you brought this point up because this is an argument that a lot of conservatives aren't willing to have and a lot of Democrats keep using as a talking point. The difference between another medical procedure such as a heart transplant or any other kind of surgery, an appendectomy, is the fact that the abortion pill is part of this contraceptive mandate. We're talking about abortifacient birth control here. Most birth control pills are not simply contraceptives that prevent conception from happening. They're two parts. They're two parts medically. The first part of them is supposed to suppress ovulation so that conception doesn't happen. But if that fails, it triggers a secondary provision of the medication that actually aborts the conceived child, the fertilized egg here. And that's the part that makes it different if an insurance company, the people paying into the insurance, are funding that versus something like a heart transplant, because people are there are a lot of people, the majority of people in our country actually, have moral objections to abortion, and we shouldn't be making people who have moral objections to ending a human life pay for it.
But the majority of people do not have objection to contraception. Your definition is extreme. Most scientists reject the argument that oral contraceptives are an abortifacient. In fact, a poll just came out on Trump's move on oral contraceptives, and 48-32, they opposed Trump's move removing the contraceptive mandate from Obamacare. Oral contraceptives are not abortion. Abortion is an important issue. I respect people who have strong opinions about abortion, but the overwhelming majority of Americans believe that oral contraception is not abortion. So then the question becomes,
first of all, consensus does not equal fact. Consensus does not equal fact. It doesn't matter what people believe. It doesn't matter how questions are phrased on studies. The fact of the matter is, if an egg is fertilized, it has created a unique DNA that is a new person that has been created. The second triggered part of many birth control pills triggers the fact that it will cause the lining of your uterus to shed so that fertilized egg cannot take hold and cannot implant. That is the definition of a chemical abortion. There is no argument there on the scientific merit. Whether or not people are fine with that, I mean, I can state studies just the same as you can. The Susan B. Anthony list just released one this morning that said the majority of people do agree with the fact that it's putting a substantial burden on people's religious practices if companies are forced to cover things that they object to. That's the crux of this matter. And I would think the fact that Democrats talk so often about the separation of church and state, that they would respect the fact that some people have religious or moral objections against contraceptives that include abortifacients, and that we shouldn't make those people pay for that.
Well, we're a long way now from over-the-counter, which is a separate issue. But I would argue that freedom of religion and separation of church and state means that just because an employer has a religious belief, it shouldn't affect the employee's ability to get health insurance. The employer should not have power over the employee, and I would rather have the state get in between the employer and the employee and protect the employee, because one's religious freedom can be violated by the state, but it can also be violated by somebody, an individual, your employer, who has power over you. That is an exercise of religious freedom that must be protected. The employer's freedom, the employee's freedom must be protected from the employer. That's a separate issue from over-the-counter, but it is a vital one when it comes to religious freedom, I would argue.
And perhaps this is the difference between, and this is really important to point out for our viewers, this is the difference between liberal philosophy and conservative philosophy, because you're basically saying that, the difference between an employer, I guess, pushing their religious beliefs on an employee, that the employee should be protected, but who's protecting the employer from being told what to do or being told to violate their religious beliefs by the government? That's a lot more dangerous, because the employee has the decision to make. If they don't like the coverage, the health insurance coverage at that company, they can go somewhere else. The employer, how can they get away from government telling them how to practice their religion? That's a very, very dangerous proposition, and I think that's one that liberals are on the losing end of this argument. Ian, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate that you're willing to talk about this stuff.